Hi, this tutorial is about high to low poly baking. We're going to use Substance Painter to do it. There's two things that this process requires. First off, you need a low poly mesh and a high poly mesh. So I'm going to hit F3 to go to wireframe. I'm going to click on this shape. Now this is my low poly mesh. Okay, I even have a name selection set up over there. If I right click and say hide unselected, it's a simple polygon. If I put unwrap UVW on it and open the UV editor, you see that it has UVs that go and fit directly into this space, right? And this represents our image, the left, right, top, and bottom. So convert that at poly. I'm just going to take this and I'm going to say copy to the menu, export selected, and I'm going to say logo underscore LP for low poly. I'm going to save it as an FBX. Make sure smoothing groups is defined and hit OK. I'm going to right click and unhide all. And my low poly is still selected. I'm just going to select that and say hide unselected. Alright, so all the polygon data that makes up this model here, if I hit F4, is going to be baked into the texture. Right, so as much as possible we want to avoid seeing facets. So maybe I'll take this and hit use NURBS. Nope, don't want to do it. This is pretty high poly enough though. Now one thing I have done is in the material editor I've assigned multiple materials to these objects. Right? None of these actually have the just default colors on them. These are actual materials assigned to them because I'm going to generate what's called an ID mask. So I have my main logo shape here, which I built out of splines. And then I have a large backing that's underneath it. The backing is larger than the low poly mesh. So I'm going to grab all this, file, export selected. I'm going to call this logo underscore HP. Alright, now I'm going to pause the tutorial while I go ahead and I'm going to open up another program, Substance Painter. This program I've opened up is Substance Painter. It allows you to bake high poly to low poly detail and then assign materials to your models. And so it may come up saying that there's a newer version. You want to say no, you don't want to download that. And then here on the welcome page, I'm just going to close that out and walk you through it. Now, my viewport layout, maybe I'm going to do reset UI, and this should match what the default UI setup is. Now I'm going to do File New, and I'm going to change the template here to PBR Metallic and Roughness Algorithmic. I'm going to leave the document resolution at 1024. Under File, I'm going to select, I'm just going to paste in the path and select my low poly mesh, click OK, and then just click OK. So it should load it up here. And there it is. If I hit F, that'll focus it in. You don't see anything here in the 3D view. I'm going to hold Alt and click over here in the top part and just kind of move, and now you can see it. The reason we didn't see it is because we were looking straight at it from the side. Alright, middle mouse button, if you scroll that, it zooms in and out. If you hold Alt and click, it allows you to orbit. If you hold the middle mouse button and Alt, you can zoom in and out. Alright, so I'm going to come over here to Texture Set Settings. I'm going to hover over the properties and lower this down. So under Texture Set, you see there's all these different channels. So we need to generate different mesh maps in order to start creating the different map channels. So I'm going to click Bake Mesh Maps. And here under the common, I'm just going to say for high definition meshes, I'm going to click and I'm going to select my high poly model and say Open. Then I'm going to come down here to ID. I want to change the ID Baker parameter from vertex color to material color. And now I'm going to click Bake. And what that's going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to generate a series of images. And those images are going to end up creating the basic material. Now, we do see, in my case, it looks like there's some errors happening. And so I'm going to have to take a quick look over in Max at my high poly model. So sometimes you do end up with rendering errors. Sometimes it helps if you come in and just define edges. Like here I'm going to click Connect, and I'm going to click Connect here. And maybe I'll just get these two over on the side. Really, you kind of want to look for concave areas. Those would be the areas that would give you the most trouble. All right, top level, zoom out, grab everything, and re-export it. Export, export selected. I'm going to overwrite that. And now if I go back to Substance, go to Bake Mesh Maps, and I'm going to bake it again. We'll see if it comes out better this time. It looks like it didn't like that either. All right, let's go take one more look at my model here. This was not expected. All right, why don't I just, I'm going to come over here, remove that loop, and under vertex, just select these 2 points and hit connect. And then I'm going to grab this edge and do remove loop on that. And left some verts behind. Let's just remove those verts. There we go. Okay. Maybe I'll just grab this ring and hit collapse. Sorry, I did not anticipate this tutorial going as poorly as it happens to be going right now. So sometimes, even when you're only worried about just the overall mesh details, sometimes you do still run into problems. I'm going to just click T to go to the top, kind of zoom in here, go into vertex, and I'm just going to make them planar along X, and click weld. That looks to be good. Okay, let's give all of this a shot now. File, export, export selected, logo high poly, save, yes, okay. And then come over here and let's try baking this out one more time. It takes a little minute there to kind of bake it out. Weird that's showing up. Well, let's just, so it looks like it has more info going on. I'm going to ignore that and see if maybe just putting the material on. So basically at this point I could come here to the basic materials and I could throw those on. Oops, I accidentally clicked on it and undocked it, and then you click and hold to redock it. Alright, so let's take something. Like here's iron chainmail. What if I put that material on my model? Let's see what that looks like. Alright, that looks really odd. I can come into the properties and I could adjust the scale on it if I want it to be smaller. Let's get rid of that because that does not look good. I could come in here and I could put something on like this steel rust and wear and see how that gives me a basic look for my model here. Now I could right click and say add mask with color selection, and I'm going to pick a color. I'm going to assign this to all those pink areas. I'm going to go in and make another, and for this one let's do let's put leather bag. I don't want that on everything, so we'll do add mask with color selection and pick a color. I'm going to pick the green. And now that shows up in that location. Right? And so this is one way you could kind of start to see some of these coming through. And I'm starting to think that maybe the reason that's coming in, let's try something else. I'm going to go to my texture set settings, bake mesh maps, and you have these distances, max front and max rear. I'm going to increase the max front to 0.1 and try baking again. And you see when I bake the second time, I get a lot more details showing up. And that's because if we look here in max, my low poly is very low. And so what was happening is when it was baking, it didn't see all of the polygon detail that was there. So all that little bit I did to clean up the model was actually useless because that wasn't the problem. What I should have done first was check to see the bake mesh maps and make sure I was baking out as far as I needed to. Okay, so now you see that I have a lot more colors, there's a lot more shape happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here to Smart Materials. Smart Materials are a combination of materials and what are called generators. They get a little bit more interesting. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make another folder here, and inside it I'm going to drop something different like brass old. All right, you can see how that comes in there. And look at how it adds. If I come down here, let's see. If you hold shift and the right mouse button, it takes the environment, and this is lit by an environment, and it rotates it around so you can see how the light plays on your object. You see here we get a little bit of pixelation. That's the resolution. We can increase that. You see how this reacts like actual metal. And so I could come in, and in a new folder I could add something else, like if I wanted to put bronze on there. And right now it's layering on top of itself. And much like Photoshop, I could set it to multiply on top, or I could go through and just mask it. I'm going to do add mask with color selection. I'm going to mask out kind of that outer edge. Right. And so you can layer in as many of these as you want. If you make an account with Algorithmic, you could track down and get, you could actually download from Substance Share some of these sort of materials that I have. This one I put on as Gothic. This is one I got off of Substance Share. Let's do big color and change the overall backing. So there we go. So now I have a neat logo. And once I'm done and I'm happy with what I have here, I'm going to do File, Save, of course, and then I'm going to export. And then when I export, I'm going to go ahead and paste in the path, select folder, and I'm just going to export it out. And so I'm going to export out this PBR metal rough, say export. All right, and if I go to my folder, you'll see in my folder I now have my textures. I export them out as PNGs. So if I come into Max and let's select my low poly, I'm going to right click and say hide unselected, so I only have my low poly. Make this perspective, orbit around, and I'm going to open up the material editor. Here's the multi-sub-object material I use to create my ID masks. Let's bring over a new standard, select our mesh, assign the material to it, and now I'm going to bring in my maps. I'm going to bring in the base color. Before I do that, I'm going to delete it and go back out here. And I'm going to change this. I'm going to call this logo underscore BC. All right, because what it names it is the name of the model, logo underscore LP, the name of the material, and then what the specific map is. So I'm just going to abbreviate these. It's a good habit to get into. So it'll be logo underscore N for normal. And now, because we are working in what's called a PBR, physically based renderer pipeline, your main maps are metallic and roughness. Those don't have any place inside 3ds Max in its default renderer. A lot of the none of the metals are going to work if you were to use the standard renderer, which uses glossiness and specular level. Only these are going to work. The logo, oops, I double clicked on that accidentally. I'm going to bring over the normal. So if you want to see any of these show up, we could put our base color on here, and I'm just going to bring over our normal bump and plug that into bump, and then plug in the normal. And I can right click and say show realistic, and now you can see how that shows up, right? And really it's just the per pixel lighting information. I can add to that my diffuse, so we could see that as well. It will look radically different because you don't have the metal, you don't have the roughness. The renderer that causes the display here and the materials work very, very differently inside 3ds Max than they do inside a Substance, as well as in a Unity and Unreal. Right? So for us, we can do this to see the base color and the normal if we want in here, but really it's more about generating textures that'll work inside the game engine. All right, so that's the process of going through and just at a very, very superficial basic level working with Substance Painter.